Hello, everyone, and thanks for sticking around for this Q&A for Strawberry Mansion, which is taking place as part of IFF Boston 2021. My name is Brian Tam. I'm the Executive Director here at IFF Boston. We have some special guests, so I'd like to bring them up. So please welcome co-directors Albert Birney. Hello.
Hello.
And Kentucker Audley. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
And to moderate this discussion, our friend Sean Burns, who is a critic and writer for WBUR's The Artery. Welcome back, Sean.
Hi, thanks.
Really looking forward to Oops, sorry. Looking forward to this. So, Sean, I'm going to get out of the way and hand it off to you.
All right. Well, I guess we're assuming everybody just watched the movie, so I think they might need a little come down period for a second. I had a thought today when I was watching it again. When you're making this film, like say you're shooting the scene when you're on a ship surrounded by mice in naval uniforms, is there a moment when you're thinking to yourself like, oh God, what have we done?
No, that's the part where it gets good. That's the part where like, finally we've made it. We're making a movie that feels like a movie. But, it's like we have such background in DIY small movies, and that scene in particular was one that it felt like a bigger budgeted movie, and it was like we've arrived. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think like you sit with the ideas and the script for so long. You've been imagining these rat sailors on a ship, fighting this blue demon for so long that when you're finally there, it's like you just are. Yeah, you're relieved that you're finally here, and you just think about getting it right. And that was a particularly cold day too, so I think a lot of us were just trying to stay warm as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of elements to that. We only had a very short amount of time, and we were docked at this like tourist ship, and there was music playing from the shore at Ripley's Believe It or Not, and they wouldn't turn it off, and I had this gigantic beard, that it takes 2 hours to put on, and it's freezing, and yeah, the mice are roaming around, and it was a scene. Yeah.
You guys certainly have a thing for like bipedal people wearing animal masks. Like, well, if we could talk about Sylvia, which I have here, the lovely Factory 25 edition.
Yeah. Nice.
Sylvia was my favorite movie of IFF Boston 2017, and I think there's some interesting parallels here with this film, because in Sylvia we have like the TV show that represents this crass culture. And I was thinking about Strawberry Mansion recently when I was getting gas, and I'm pumping my gas, and they're playing a fucking commercial. So I was wondering if you could speak to a little bit about how this movie is about the invasion into our most private spaces of this crass commercial advertising culture.
This pure moment of pumping gas is interrupted.
I'm with you, Sean. I don't know when they started doing these commercials at the gas pump, but it's just the worst. And the second you start pumping, it starts to play because they know you're just like dormant. They know that you have nowhere to go. You're stuck. And then the second your hand stops pumping, the commercial stops. And it's like, it's really wild. But I don't remember the question. But
yeah, I mean, it's obviously a prime easy target to sort of like tackle the profusion of advertisement and marketing into our daily lives, and it's sort of unavoidable. And I mean, I feel like we were both trying to tackle some satirical elements and some commentary, but also just not getting too heavy-handed with that stuff, just sort of using it as like cinematic devices so that we can kind of dig into like deeper things than that, big emotional things about love and adventure and like deep subconscious stuff and time periods and things like that. So we're all just kind of throwing it together. I think some people are a little underwhelmed by the satire of it and the sci-fi nature of it, but it wasn't really intended to be that kind of a satire as much as it is a love story, I think. But maybe Albert thinks differently about it.
I mean, I appreciate the love story aspect, but I'm kind of coming at it more from just how many animal masks going to get in there. And
no, I feel you're onto something, because the chicken shake is inevitable at this point, right? Like, I mean, once they started putting them in bowls and not separating the sides, like,
yeah, I feel like with a fast food element, that like a couple times a year, I'll see a commercial or a billboard for some new, Wendy's, like the Baconator. They're just like these obscene new foods that you're just like, how did we get to this point where this is like this is just what it is now. This is your lunch, is this like insane thing. So yeah, I mean, the chicken shake probably already happened. We're probably a little bit too late to that, I think, almost.
Somebody sent us some ad for something that was kind of a liquidy type shake meal recently. Basically the chicken shake, but yeah, we're there. It's not futuristic. It's just the current moment. We say it's 2032 in the movie, but it's also kind of just right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of the time period, so you have the guy who's dressed up as a 40s private investigator, right? Like, when I love movies when I can't tell when they are.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Throwing it all in there, all the time periods, it's the cars from the 60s or 70s. He looks like he's from the 40s and 50s. The VHS tapes of the 80s, and then it's somehow future. It's just fun to throw it all in there together.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Silvio, if in the first 5 minutes you can buy into this idea that the main character is just like a man with a gorilla mask, and then he just is a gorilla. Like, if you can get behind that and get lost in the movie, then I think you can be all right. In this one, if you can like be okay with the fact that we're just mashing up 100 years into just one story, if you can just let yourself kind of get lost in that, then maybe you have an okay time. But there's people that didn't like, they don't let themselves get past the gorilla mask. They don't let themselves get past the different time
They
period.
really got mad. They thought the gorilla wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be those inevitable comments like, that's not a real gorilla, or like, this isn't 2035. We won't have this technology, so.
Frogs don't play the saxophone.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, I made movies completely different than this before Al, and then Al like had this kind of childlike sense of wonder in his movies. It's like, yeah, it's fun, why not? Just like every movie is just normal people engaging in what we call reality. Just like, you can do a whole lot of other stuff, and just try,
Yeah, like, I mean, we both love Back to the Future, growing up watching Back to the Future, and it's like the time travel element. They're just kind of like, Doc Brown is like the flux capacitor or whatever, he just like names this thing, and you see this kind of machine like blinking, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's the flux capacitor, that's going to do it. Like, if you stop and you're like, now wait a minute, what's the science behind this? Like, like, maybe
I find with movies like that, the more they explain it, the more I have time to pick holes in it. Whereas if someone just says this is what it is, I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
definitely move on. Just like this.
Well, the house is on fire. He has to wake up, or
Yeah, definitely. Like, this is the machine that records dreams. That's all you need to go. Let's keep it going. This is the one that blocks it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the fun. Like, for our next movie, we're just keeping going down that line. Just like mask and I mean, it's like it's so. I mean, it's just like fun to make, and I think people are relieved sometimes. I mean, some people can't get into it, but a lot of people, I think, are relieved to see something that's not reality.
Well, and it's also so tactile. Like, I know Nancy, the festival programmer, and we were wondering how many glue guns you guys go through on a given shoot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun for me, is just like loading up the glue gun. I got a glue stick here. You get these real thick ones, the long ones, right. And just keep that on all day, just gluing. And I mean, I don't know the official count of how many glue guns or glue sticks, but any good production, you're going to go through 10, 20 glue guns, I think.
I know it makes a difference as a viewer, because so many times you're looking at stuff that's clearly not there. You like watch a Marvel movie, nobody's even in the same space. They're all standing in front of green screens in Atlanta at different times.
Yeah.
And it was nice, like you guys were in a room like, oh, I bet I could touch that wall and it would be there.
Definitely.
So we probably had to paint that, huh?
Yeah.
That's what we're really focused on, making things that are tactile and practical. And even if it looks, less professional than, Marvel movies or whatever, it's like that's part of the spirit of the films. And it's like you can tell that the masks are real, the people are interacting with the props in a real way. And, it's harkening back to this 80s physical practical effects, like, movies that we grew up with. That's the idea, is to try to make as much physically there as possible.
I notice it's like works its way into this, not even subtext, but like the text of the script where she didn't switch to digital. So you have all these analog tapes to go through, and it's on an old top loader like I used to have.
Yeah, it was funny trying to find the right VCR to like convert into this, dream watching machine. Because like a normal VCR, it's like, the tape kind of goes in and disappears. But yeah, there's something so beautiful about that top loader and just like the sound of it popping up and putting the tape in and pushing it down. And it was definitely like a lot of thought was put into like which version of this is going to be the one that we're going to.
Yeah, you can't have any VHS because that's not the future. If it's a top loader, that one that we rarely have seen, then that's the future. If we, just anything that's not kind of just commonplace in our lives, that can represent the future or the past, whatever we need it to at the moment.
Yeah.
So there's also an element, we're getting into like the subtext of the voyeurism here, where it's almost like, at this point I feel like, the detective represents the movie buff, where he's, watching these old videotapes and what looks like a giant old video store. Mm-hmm. And was any of that conscious, or is it just the nature of these things bubbling to the surface?
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially the video store, a major inspiration in the early days of kind of working through the story was just trying to like investigate that feeling when I was a kid of going into the video store, on a Friday night, and you're standing there and it's just like a wall of, they're movies, but they're dreams, it's like it feels like you're at this portal where you can like pick a different universe to explore or something. So that was in there. And then like the room where she keeps all her tapes being like that kind of small little video store side room or something you go into, and you're just like in awe of all the different possibilities, and like the kind of tax auditor, detective, investigator as this person who has to like literally go through and watch all these things and kind of, at some point gets lost in them, just like, if you're watching a movie and you start watching it as like you're tethered to reality. And then if it's a good movie, or if it's a movie that like sucks you in, you get totally lost in it, and you kind of like come out at 90 minutes later, like, whoa, where, I was just somewhere else. Like that was a trip.
Yeah. We love movies, and we love pasting all together, like different styles, different genres. I feel like there's a lot of different types of movies in this movie, from like surrealism into sci-fi to comedy to romance. It's just like, and we were excited to put all that stuff in there in sort of a mashup way, and we didn't really know what kind of movie this was going to be, and we don't really think about genre on the front end. Just kind of try to throw as many as we can in there. But just it all comes from a love of movies and excitement to be involved in the world of creating them.
Well, and then as you're saying, these like sacred objects, because there's that horrible violation when the kids are destroying the tapes on the floor and they're pulling them out. And I could just see like my sister with my tape of The Untouchables. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's I as like a curious kid, I remember like one of our tapes broke or like stopped working, and I unscrewed it and opened it up, and it was like such a wild moment to like see the guts of the movie, and like pull them out. And but when someone's doing that against, that's like a true violation. That's like destroying this, that sacred object that could be, worship.
Heavy horror movie shit there, man.
Yeah.
We had a lot more of that. I had to hit the cutting room floor for various reasons, but there was a lengthy sequence of the family tearing out the tapes, and in fact being in a room full of the empty tapes. So it's very briefly in there now, but there was a much longer sequence of just drowning in these tapes that have been unspooled and taken apart.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, it's nightmarish, it's like these are people's movies that are.
Yeah, the blowout scene, right, with all the tapes on the wall.
Yeah.
So, I was wondering if you could talk people through the look of this movie, because I mean it's amazing. I was like, what the hell did they do? How did they do this? Because everything about it looks like an optical printing from a movie from the 80s, like the ones we were talking about. So how did you figure out how to get that look?
That's cool that you said optically printed, because yes, first off, like all those old movies that I loved watching as a kid, when they would, when you knew like a special effects heavy shot was coming up, you'd see like extra grain, because you knew that they had optically printed or they had run it through a couple times to get the effects printed on the thing. So I knew like going into it, we were going to be doing so many different types of animations and effects, and some would be digital and some would be, stop motion, and some would be miniatures and all these different things. So like trying to think, how can we just, match these all together? And so what we actually did was, we shot digitally, and then when we had finished editing, we printed it onto 16 millimeter so that it would all kind of, flatten together. And then that 16 millimeter was redigitized, and that's the final file that you see. So the idea was just kind of like, exactly like you said, like you're watching and you have no idea how we did it or how we made it. It's just like, is the one cohesive look of the film.
There's so many digital. Well, I mean, mostly it's practical effects, but there are actually a ton of digital effects as well that are sort of hidden and are kind of mashed up with the stop motion and different elements that sort of like some stop motion, some digital, and in the same effect. And so I think that has a real disorienting effect, or like invigorating, however you want to look at it. I mean, I think the one example that comes to mind is like caterpillar shooting up out of the water. That was a stop motion caterpillar. But then we added some real wave splashing stuff. So there's like this combination of digital and then, just putting it all back to film. And I feel like the grain of the film just, I mean, it's everyone, it's not a new conversation, but there's just something special that the textures of the grain, to the point we actually like put in specific little pieces of grain in some shots that were like just taken from other shots, because it feels like when you see those little dots, you don't even recognize them. You see the little grain dots, it just somehow transports you. That's all it takes, and you won't even really recognize it. So just trying to smash it all together. I guess that's the answer to all the questions, is just smash everything together.
And it's like, we like Kentucker said, we love movies, and the movies that we love the most are the movies we grew up with. Were all shot on film, and if it doesn't have that texture to it, or that like that thing you can't define, it's like digital just doesn't have that to me. But if I see this film, it just feels like a movie, and it automatically, like, I'm maybe quicker to like let myself believe in the world of the movie if it feels like a movie. So it's just like, how can we make this feel like a movie? And that's still in 2021 is like, you have to put it on film. Like, that's how to make it feel like a movie, at least for us, and the kind of like stuff we're doing, not to say that every single thing needs to have that, but I think just that's it helps the type of movie that we're making.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we love films shot on digital as well. It's just like he said, though, that's the type of movie that we're trying to harken back to make something that feels nostalgic, and feels like a movie of yesteryear.
Well, I know, especially when you're in like a festival context, you're watching so many of these low budget independent films and they're all on video. And then once you see that grain, I know I sit up like, oh, here we go.
oh, it's a movie. I got to put my tie on and kind of like,
Right.
this is a movie.
Well, now, I mean, since we're watching everything at home, it's so hard to like, I mean, have you been having that trouble? Like, what's a movie anymore and what's just content? Like, how do you differentiate when I know I have like a ritual if I'm going to watch a film. Do you guys do something like that? Or
No, I think, yeah, that's important. For me, it's just like, it's like kind of like, okay, let's watch a movie. Let's like take the time, because you can't just throw it on right before bed. It's like you have to like give yourself the time and like, put your phone in the other room, all these things that in a movie theater, it just happens because you're in a public space. And if you're a good person, you're not going to have your phone out,
Yeah, there's like at least for me, like when I sit down and watch TV at the end of the day, I'm like, if it's a TV show, if it's a TV show or like I guess if it's a TV show, I don't really pay attention, but like if it's a movie, I'm like, okay, now I have to, now I have to perk up. Like that's a big decision to put on a movie, and like if it's a movie, you got to pay attention. Mm-hmm. That's how I am. I'm a movie guy. I have a brand called Movies Brand, so you have a hat there.
Right, I know that's funny what you're saying about like putting your phone in the other room, because that's what I do too. Like you have to turn off the lights, but I will say now, everybody who rented this movie has it for 48 hours, and I've watched it a couple of times. I saw it at Sundance, and I've gotten a link. And if you're gonna fall asleep to a movie, this one's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. For the longest time, I thought falling asleep to a movie was just like the biggest offense. Like I went and saw Punch Drunk Love at like midnight opening night, and I've been waiting for this movie. I was in college. I was waiting for it for like years because it was his follow-up to Magnolia, and I fell asleep in like the first 30 minutes and woke up kind of towards the end. I was like so upset with myself. I was just like, how could I do this? And I went back and saw it a couple days later, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, you know what? It's not the worst thing to fall asleep. Like a good movie, I think, is going to maybe put you in some kind of dream state anyway. Like I know like Tarkovsky movies, I fall asleep to those all the time. And I think it's just because he's such a great filmmaker. Bergman too. It's like Bergman, they give you these like conversations and ideas that are probably closer to a dream state than a waking state. And so your body, at least my brain, is just kind of like conditioned to go to sleep. And what's fun is when you kind of like wake up from sleeping in a movie and you're not really sure what's happening. And there's like that couple minutes of like, you're feeling a little bit lost, but it's not a bad feeling. It's just kind of like, whoa, you're getting something different out of the movie than if you're fully awake. So I'm all for that, fall asleep to Strawberry Mansion.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was thinking how great it would be, sorry to do virtual Sundance this year, because one of those midnight shows at the Egyptian where you're exhausted and everyone's kind of doing the head nod anyways.
I mean, ideally, by the end of the movie, the entire theater would just be fast asleep. I think that would be incredible. And the dreams and the half movies that were happening in their heads, I think, would be far superior to anything that we could ever put on the screen.
Well, it's certainly not going to clear up, but by watching it physically the whole time, I feel like you might as well just fill it in yourself in some way. It doesn't explain itself fully. That
was one of the things I love that you did, was like the temporal kind of, it's one shot. Then, it's been 7 years.
Yeah.
I know my dreams have a lot more like anxiety and nudity, but that's just me. But I think like,
yeah. We had some other dream sequence ideas that veered a little bit more into that anxiety, taking a test and your teeth falling out. That maybe on the Blu-ray we'll put some of those onto the special features or deleted scenes.
Yeah, how did you find yourself navigating that second half of the movie in the editing room? Was there a lot of I imagine there was a lot of experimentation and screening it for people and such.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it was really hard to kind of know how to shape that, because the first half is a little bit more it's presented in a more of a explicit way and sort of some of the character building and themes, but the second half kind of just goes off in this dreamscape where anything can happen. And it was definitely, I think we came to understand that less is more in terms of just going fully into the dream world. We had another sequence that was like maybe 10 or 15 more minutes of the dream crazy logic going anywhere. There was a scene in the desert that we eventually had to cut because it was just like it was going too far away from the core story. But I mean, there's definitely a much longer movie in there.
Yeah, and I remember in the edit, it's like it just feels like it's dragging. It's like the idea is we're both editing it, and we've seen it 100 times, and we would watch it, and it's like, where does it start to get boring? And it's like that's where we need to figure out. And you start editing, and it's like, okay, 5 minutes in, you're bored. Okay, you work on it. Now it's like the 10-minute mark, and now it's the 20-minute mark, 30-minute mark. And we were getting all the way up until like the dream stuff, and it was like, wow, the movie's really cooking. And then when it gets to this fantastic adventure stuff, it gets boring. And you're like, this is when it should be the most exciting. So it's like how to reconfigure it. And luckily, with a movie like this, you can take scenes and totally flip them around or like put them earlier, later. You can just take it out because anything goes. So it's like we had a great freedom in the edit of just like, let's just, keep playing and rearranging and adding and subtracting all these elements until, we can watch it and not get bored,
So I was wondering if you talk about the cast. Like, first of all, like Penny Fuller, that was so great to see her.
Yeah.
How did you happen upon her for this part? Was it you're just watching All the President's Men one night and said that?
Yeah, she was I think the only one we used a casting director for out of New York. And yeah, we both we were sent this like list of potential people, and they had their headshots and video of other stuff, and she was the one when we watched her where it was just like both of us felt it right away. A lot of the people were great, but they just didn't feel like this eccentric woman living alone in this house who records her dreams and doesn't pay. It's like Penny just had that attitude, that feeling. I think the video for her wasn't even like from a movie. It was just like a Q&A after some, like a Broadway play or something. And it was like, wow, who she is Bella. Like if we can just get her to kind of be herself. But yeah, All the President's Men. I don't think I've watched that since I was like in high school. But I've been curious to go back and rewatch it now just to see Penny in it.
And of course, that's your uncle is her son. Right?
Yeah, Reed. Yeah, Reed. I've like he's my uncle, and I've always seen him in movies and TV shows as I was growing up as a kid, and always was a dream to want to like put him in a movie, and this role was basically like written with him in mind, years ago before I'd even asked him if he'd do it or anything. And that was very fun. And he's definitely, he's a professional. You can tell he's been acting for many, many years. So, it was nice to work with someone who he's like, you want another take? And then he would just kind of roll through the lines again and say them in a completely different way. It's like sometimes with actors, you're looking at like the 5 takes you have, and they say the line the exact same way for 5 times. And you're like, well, I guess we're going to have to do it this way. But with Reed, going back through the footage, he's like, he said it 9 different ways. We could like totally, it was great. It was like, he's aware of editing and what we have to do and is giving us the options.
And you were the frog, right?
Yeah, I was the frog and the blue demon. I specialize in acting with the masks on, with heads on. I was Silvio, so
Oh, the frog moved like Silvio. I was like, oh
yeah, yeah, that's funny. I'm always looking to find little roles that I can do. I really enjoy it.
Albert lights up when he's under a mask. I mean, his body moves in ways I've never seen it move without a mask, and it's a special thing when he put that blue demon mask on. I mean, and then he was playing the character like the blue demon ad pop-up character. Just the way he moved is really special.
And then you got to give people direction while you're the Blue Demon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yelling at the crew for screwing up.
Yeah, I mean, the Blue Demon was like, it's like I don't really think too much about what I'm gonna do before, like the second that the head came on and I was sitting at the table, I started like doing this like breathing and like kind of like freaky, scary, like moaning, and I was like, yeah, I hadn't thought that out, but it's just like that's what the Blue Demon needed or wanted in that moment. And like some people on set were like, well, we could get someone else to do the Blue Demon because Kentucker's in the scene and we need someone, directing behind the camera. And I kept saying like, well, it's gonna be all right. We did Sylvia the whole movie with the two of us, in front of the camera. It's gonna be all right. And then we did it. And then afterwards, the crew member kind of was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like they saw that I had to do the Blue Demon. Like you couldn't. It's one of those things where it's like I can't. If someone else was playing the Frog Waiter or the Blue Demon, I think I would micro direct them so annoyingly and like tell them to, move their hip this way or like grunt that way, and it'd just be the most annoying thing. So it's almost like if I do it, I don't have to, make enemies with any of our actors or anything.
Well, we're coming up on time here, but I was wondering, Kentucker, if you could tell everybody about No Budge, because I think our audience would be really interested in this service.
Yeah, so I run a streaming platform called No Budge. It's a streaming platform for young and emerging filmmakers, mostly short films, but also some features. And we just launched apps on Apple TV and Roku and Amazon Fire and iOS. So it's basically just a daily short film curation service and open for submissions for any young filmmakers, and also just to kind of see what's going on in the short film and low budget indie film world. And yeah, thanks for mentioning it.
Hey, well, thanks guys for doing this. I really I love the movie. I love the last movie. I'm sorry we didn't get to see each other at the party this time, but
yeah,
next one, right?
Right.
I mean, we enjoyed coming to Boston last time with Sylvia, and we're so excited to be back. I wish we could be there.
And so the next film is going down the same path.
Fun and yeah,
Definitely. We're going.
oh yeah, we kind of look at it as end of a trilogy.
So on behalf of the festival, I want to thank all of you. Sean, thanks, of course, for moderating. And Alan Kentucker, thanks for coming back to the festival virtually. Thanks for sharing your film with us. And thanks for talking to our audience. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Sean.